Up for Discussion Live. Hosted by Jeff Sylvia and Shannon Sylvia. Bringing you the hottest topics, the coolest guests, and a live chat, so you can be part of it all. Up for Discussion Live starts now.
Yes, we are live, and welcome to Up for Discussion here on upfordiscussionlive.com, and also in there in Leominster at LATV. And we would definitely want to thank everybody over there. Right at the top, Tina, Carl, Jack and Jane, Dennis, everybody, Robert, right down the line. We could not do what we do without you, and we're very, very grateful to be on Leominster Access Television as well. Guys, we have a great show for you tonight. I am joined by nobody tonight sitting here. I am solo. There is no Shane and Sylvia tonight, so we are going to make the best of it. I am hanging out with you, and yes, Morgan, we are live. It is cool because we get to hang out in the chat room together. You guys get to be part of the show. You can be part of the discussion, and as always, we certainly appreciate that. It is good to be back here in front of you guys after a long, long West Coast trip last week. One of those trips, guys, where we got stuck in airports. We're sleeping on airport floors. Mechanical failures on the plane. And boy, I'll tell you, it was a long home, so to speak. And definitely glad to be here after being off last week. We've got a quick breaking story that I want to bring to you guys before we get into it. And I can't really believe that I'm actually reporting about this. The Westminster Board of Health here locally in Massachusetts, I can't believe I'm saying this, is trying to ban tobacco sales in their town. Guys, I'm not a smoker. I quit when they went over $1. Anybody that knows me knows that I hate the stuff. It smells awful. People that do it while you're eating are disgusting. But besides all that, guys, this has gone way, way too far. Now, I do want to bring in a caller. I believe we have a caller calling in on this subject. Caller, you're on with Jeff here on Up for Discussion.
We do. Good evening, Jeff. How are you, my friend?
Hey, guys. I'd like to introduce you to Mike Cooley from the Leominster area. Mike is also a talk show host, does a show called Cool Talk, which is going to be coming back to the network here very soon. And Mike was actually the one that brought this to my attention, so I'm really glad you're calling in. What can you tell us about the town of Westminster and the battle for the sale of tobacco?
This is really preposterous, Jeff. I mean, here I live in Leominster, but I grew up in Westminster. My family has had a home up there since 1961, and Westminster's always been a quaint little town. And now you get the Board of Health taking what rights that we have and saying that just a party of three is going to dictate to the town and really put a severe financial burden on the local business owners in town. It's crazy. I can't see how they can do that in this day and age in our country.
I can't either. Now, why cigarettes? I mean, there's lots of vices out there for them to tackle, so to speak, if that would be the case. Why do they have to maybe, go after cigarettes? What is the MO behind that, do you think?
I think it's mainly because it's politically correct. And it's like anything else where you have people that are constantly trying to fight the NRA, and the NRA is always trying to defend gun rights, because if you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. Mm-hmm. So they'll start at cigarettes, but where do they stop? Once they say that you can't buy cigarettes, which are a legal product, they all want, all the cities and towns and states, they all want to survive off the tax money from the tobacco tax. But now they want to ban the cigarettes. Where do they stop next? Or where do they go next?
Yep.
Do they ban beer and wine after that? Do they ban sugar? They won't ban condoms. They'll give condoms to a 10-year-old and say, that's fine.
Sure.
But you can't be a 45-year-old and go down the street to the Vincent's Market and buy a pack of Marlboros. You're going to have to go to Gardner. Wow. And eventually, if I'm going to Gardner to buy my Marlboros, I might as well pick up my bread and milk while I'm there.
Yep.
Well, you know what? If I'm just getting bread and milk, why am I do all my grocery shopping there? Who even needs to do grocery shopping in Westminster? Let's just have another empty storefront in town.
And you never go grocery shopping on an empty stomach, so you probably grab a bite to eat out there before you go.
Exactly. It's
wow. It's a sad state of affairs.
It's really a shame,
is.
and I just can't see how they can do it. I mean, if one thing, they've certainly put Westminster on the map.
Yeah.
They've had quite a lot of media attention this week. Talking to Brian Vincent earlier, his phone has just been ringing off the hook with people that are supporting his business. He has Vincent's Country Market right on Main Street in Westminster. But you get all the other local businesses. You have the pharmacy. You have Cumberland Farms.
Sure.
All the local, the Depot package store, every place that is just trying to survive and make a buck just so that they can live. And you get a Board of Health that, in the big run, you might just look at it and say, well, it's only a pack of cigarettes. It's no big deal. But it really is when you look at the big scope of things. They're really going to put a big financial burden. I don't think it will ever pass. The town won't allow it. But I think it's the audacity of them even attempting it.
Yeah.
And just thinking that they can just bully over the town.
Mike, as always, I certainly appreciate you calling in and giving us your 2 cents, because you definitely stand up for what's right in America, and this is something that's an absolute no-brainer. It's a slippery slope, as you said, and it starts with cigarettes, but then what other rights do they want to take from you? Not only on a city level, but then a state level, and who knows where it goes from there. But I'll tell you, I think we can both agree it's a sad state of affairs that this stuff is even coming to our neighborhood. That's for sure.
It really is. I'm surprised. I didn't think that it would ever hit here. I could see it down in Cambridge or in Sharon, but I didn't think that they would actually get to that level in Westminster. And like you say, where will it stop? Beer, wine, hunting? It could be anywhere.
Wow, you're right. Well, we hope that you'll keep us updated on the situation, and as always, thank you for bringing it to my attention, and I look forward to talking about Cool Talk with you.
My pleasure. Yep, Cool Talk will be back in a couple of weeks right on LATV. I'm looking forward to it.
We are too. We'll talk soon, Mike, and thanks again for calling in.
Thanks, Jeff. Take care. God bless America.
God bless America. Now, Mike Cooley is a Leominster native and a very deeply caring individual when it comes to his town and the rights of his community. And I can't really blame him for being fired up there, because it's a sad state of affairs when 3 members of a board in a small town want to take rights like that away. Whether you smoke or not, it's not the principle there. It's what's right for America and what our God-given rights are in this country. We've got a lot to get to, guys. Later in the show, we're going to talk a little bit about a contest that's coming up for November to Remember with our friends from Sasquatch Coffee. We certainly want to thank them for being part of what we do and co-sponsoring this contest with us. We also have a couple of very, very cool guests coming up. And as always, we're going to bring you, the phone lines will be open, the chat room will be open. We certainly want to thank all of you guys here for joining us and being part of the show and what we do. We also want to thank those making this show possible over there at Leominster Storage Solutions. Thank you so much for your support. If you want to find out more about them, you can call them at 978-466-8887, or you can visit them online at leominsterstorage.com. We also want to thank our friends over there at Village Pizza over there in North Leominster. They do a fantastic job. And once again, thank you for supporting us here at the show. To find out more about them, you can call them today at 978-343-7722. Guys, we do have a couple of very special and important guests to get to. And we're going to talk a little bit about a story revolving around a very young boy named Jeffrey Baldwin. And this spurred so much that we've talked about a little bit before in the show. We've had the sculptor of that particular statue here on the show, as well as the person responsible for funding that statue. But boy, the story behind that gets even more and more amazing as it ties in to many things of today's life. And if you care about the future of your country that your grandkids are going to live in, listen up here, folks, because it's a sad state of affairs all the way around. Bringing in now, I want to bring in our esteemed guest tonight. He hails from Canada, and he is the winner of the Marvel Comic Contest. Please say hello and give a warm welcome to John Jeffery. Thank you so much for joining us, John.
I'm here.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, we will get into the contest, the specifics of the contest a little bit earlier. The contest revolved around mainly, let's call it a huge charity coming from many, many, many people. What to you did the contest mean as you entered it and got involved in it to begin with?
Well, it was an opportunity for me to tell my life story in a way that paid forward.
Okay. Now, when you mean paying forward, you're talking about today's youth.
It was about, the story that I wrote was about bullying.
Okay.
So it was a chance for me to take all the pain that I'd experienced in my life and what I'd learned and take that and tell the story in a way that I could help other people.
Okay. Now, we had covered the story here earlier about Rehtaeh Parsons and her story. This little girl, this beautiful young lady, was bullied to the point where she committed suicide. And the story touched many, many, many people across the world very, very deeply. This is something that also was part of spawning this whole movement, if you will. Now, your story is very much paralleled in certain ways. Tell the folks a little bit about how you came here to the country and what your journey was like and some of the challenges along the way.
Well, I was born in England in 1942, just south of London, so I was right in the middle of all the bombing raids and all the dogfights. And for the first 3 years of my life, that was my existence. In 1949, my parents decided to emigrate to Canada. England was still a mess, and his sister had sponsored us. I was fine in England, but when I came to Canada, it was like all of a sudden I was very different. I had a British accent, and I was bullied from day one here. Not only that, I could read and write and do math at that age, but I was put back a year. So that was like an insult from the get-go. And the bullying continued right into high school.
Wow. Okay. Now, you're talking 1940s you came to the country?
Yes, December 1949.
1949. So, not much has changed when it comes to bullying in our students and our schools, and it can have a very, very deep effect on not only you, but I'm sure your entire family dealt with all this. How did your family deal with this and trying to help you, and what kind of support did you get?
Well, I did not get a lot of help from my family. Mostly my parents were embarrassed that, because I would get to the point where I'd get so mad and then I'd beat somebody up, and my parents got very mad about that. They were not supportive or understanding, which made it worse for me.
Wow. So you took an aggressive approach to this as a child. Your parents were mainly responsible for trying to reel you back in, because it was something that, as the bullying came, made you understandably very angry. And this anger, this passion that you had, was all translated into your drawing and the entering of the contest.
He can't hear you.
I don't know if we might have lost John. Did we lose you, John?
Hello.
Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen. It sounds like we might have lost John here. He's calling from Canada. We're gonna hope that he calls back in. And we're talking with John Jeffery, who is the Greenzone Comic Contest winner, an immigrant from England to the United States in the 1940s. And as you were just hearing, a victim of bullying, which was part of the emotional fire within him to get involved in this and produce this drawing. And, as many great art forms come, good. This sounds like John calling back in. John, are you back with us?
I'm here. Sorry, I don't know what happened.
That's all right. It's another country, so sometimes, the gerbils don't run fast enough to keep the wheel turning. That's all we can say. But we were just introducing you to our audience if you're just joining us. John Jeffery is the Greenzone Comic Contest winner, and very much inspired by him growing up as a child and going through bullying himself. He took that energy and turned it into art which is now translated into something that's huge. And John, tell us a little bit about how you channeled the anger, how you channeled the emotion and put this whole thing together?
Well, it's interesting. When I was younger, I had a real bad temper, and that part of that was from all the bullying, and it just festered inside of me for literally decades and decades. But somewhere along the way, in the mid-'70s, I went to an I'm okay, you're okay course, and I learned the difference that I, just like Rete Parsons said, I was okay all along, and I started from there to channel my anger in a positive way. And when I got into teaching, my second career, I just decided to make things work in a positive way. I discovered Dr. Sohail's Greenzone philosophy, used it with my kids, and as I healed myself as a person, I just decided that I was going to take that understanding and help other people by telling my story.
Wow, that's a very unselfish way to bring some sort of purpose and existence to what can be a very horrible situation. I do want to say hello at the same time to everybody watching and listening in the chat room around the world. Hello to Morgan. Hello to Red White. It's still on the head. Red while it's still on the head. We'll say hello to you. And Destination Truth, who's always joining us. We appreciate that. And GZDs. We want to say hello to you guys as well. And everybody watching on their handheld mobile devices, your iPhones, your tablets, and your cell phones. We certainly appreciate you joining us. And joining us tonight from Canada is the Greenzone Comic Contest winner, John Jeffery, calling in to tell us about his story and how he got involved and took a negative situation, the if you will, the whole meaning behind the entire project to begin with. And not a more fitting tribute, as well as a more fitting winner, I might add, to have you, who dealt with something growing up in their life and carried it with you your entire life, to turn it into something so positive. So definitely wanted to take our hat off to you, John, and thank you for your courage, because as we found out through a very unfortunate story regarding the young Rete Parsons, it doesn't always end well. So we do want to thank you for your courage and for your example, and hope that we can change the world one child at a time, because as we're all discussing earlier before the show, it's very important to do that. So once again, thank you. Thank you so much for your courage and for everything that you've done as far as getting involved in this contest.
Oh, you're welcome. It's a pleasure for me. I'm excited the part that really excites me is the opportunity to help other people with it, because it's an insidious thing. It eats away at your self-esteem, and it's just like Rete said, you don't realize that you're okay, that all these people are yelling at you and making you feel bad. And if we could only help people understand that they're okay, that would go a long way to preventing some of these suicides that happen.
Mm-hmm. I couldn't agree more. It's my wife and I have conversations about the world and people in the world, and in some parts of the world, as horrific as it may seem to us here in America, people eat dogs, let's say. They put them on the dinner plate and they serve them up and they eat dogs. And in our country, people, they're beloved, they're family members, we keep them as pets, and we think that that's quite barbaric. But who's right and who's wrong? It's not up to us to judge as individuals and as human beings. It's up to us to try to make the world a better place for us and our neighbors around us. And we certainly, again, thank you for your courage and being part of this. You've certainly changed lives along the way, and this has certainly changed your life as well. What is the biggest thing that you take from this, John, from this whole experience, from start to finish, and now looking toward the future? What is the biggest thing that you take from this personally?
Well, it's helped me to feel a lot better about myself. My own self-esteem has improved 100%, and it's just the whole idea of taking the pain and making it into something positive by telling the story and doing some good with it.
Wow. That's something that I think we can all relate to. I don't think there is a person out there watching or listening that has not had a painful event in their life, and will, have other painful events in their life. And it's what spawns from that, what comes from that, which is important. And it's always important to keep moving forward and picking your head up and knowing there's another day in front of you and an opportunity to make things better. So, John, we salute your courage, and once again, can we throw a picture up? Is it too early to throw the picture up of the comic book, or what do you think? I want to bring in our another special esteemed guest. I think we're going to kind of group this together a little bit, and joining us now from Canada as well, we would like to welcome Susan Jamieson, who is the Greenzone Movement Managing Director. Susan, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome. And John is still on with us as well. We want to bring you in for many, many reasons. First of all, you are the founder of Greenzone Movement and started this entire contest. And tell us, first of all, how this started for you and why you decided to get involved.
Originally, I read a book. I was asked to read a book by Dr. Solhill about Greenzone thinking. And then I read about Rehtaeh Parsons in the Globe and Mail here in Canada. And I realized that all the stories that were, all the people that were stepping up to talk about the issues around bullying, nobody really had created a platform for kids to talk to us personally. And while I salute all the, educated people and the people that care, really you don't truly understand a situation until you're living it personally. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to create a platform where kids had a way to speak to us, tell us how they felt, and tell us how we as adults could help them.
And boy, the communication lines now are so different because of social media, because of the outreach that kids have. And I joke about it all the time. Back in the day when we wanted to, get some girl's attention, we might fold up a note and sneak it over to her desk in class, and maybe she answered us that day, and maybe she answered us tomorrow, and maybe it took a couple of days. But in today's society, my point is, everything is so fast moving, so fast forward, and it moves at a speed that parents sometimes have a hard time keeping up with. And I think that whole connection, between parents and children is most important today, now more than ever. And we're going to touch on a couple of stories throughout the broadcast to bring light of that even deeper to our viewing audience. And once again, we want to invite everybody who's watching and listening tonight to put your thoughts in the chat room. Certainly say hello to Rick C., who's joined us here in the chat room as well. And Destination Truth is saying that it certainly can be an outlet for troubled students, and that's definitely what the movement is about, and the purpose behind all of the effort going on for many, many people. You guys can also be part of the show. Call in live, 323-902-6661. We welcome you to be part of the conversation that's going on tonight, and welcome your thoughts and your feelings as well. Now, boy, this is such a deep story that we've dealt with here at the network on so many different levels, starting with Rehtaeh's mother and having her join us and tell the story about Rehtaeh Parsons and how she was just literally bullied to death. This movement, this creation that you have for children as an outlet, how did you find a way to connect with kids? Obviously, the comics and something that is driven by Marvel, who also got involved, is huge to do with this. With all that we've just talked about with social media and what I call the fast forward society, how did you see it click with the connection that you were looking for in trying to help, the kids in today's youth?
Well, and it's funny. So there are things that we do quickly. We text people, we email people, but really solutions don't happen quickly. So by doing a writing contest for kids, I was asking them to step back from instant and go old school and give us some ideas that they had to put some thought into, they had to write, they had to dig in deep in their own feelings and bring them out and say, hey, I feel this way, and I'm going to write you a story and tell you how it should be. Wow. And so life can't always be at warp speed, if you will. Sometimes you do need to sit back and reflect and decide, I'm hurting, or I've made some bad choices. Mm-hmm. I don't like myself anymore. How am I going to fix myself? And you're not going to do that in 5 minutes flat, ever.
No, acknowledgement is very important, and to put on the brakes and to take that time, that's probably one of the hardest part of the process. Now, can we talk a little bit about the cover itself and the drawing itself?
Yeah, and I think that's what I think that's what I got so drawn in is my own parents are British, and so I could relate to John's story right away when I read it. But I never really thought about, okay, so we're back in World War II and my own parents are struggling. And then I reflected on their struggles all their life through John's words. But now John turned it around and we're still at war. All this time has gone by and we're still here. We're still fighting wars, and kids from war-torn countries are saying to North America, to the US and Canada, help us, let us come to your borders, let us feel safe, let us enjoy the standard of living that you guys take for granted. And if we don't get it right for these kids, we're just never going to get it right. And so when John told the story about a young boy coming from Afghanistan and coming to Canada, North America, and saying, help me, I thought, if we don't get it right this time, yeah, we're just never going to get it right. And culturally, John culturally fit in many ways. He spoke English, he looked like us. It's not a huge obstacle that he had to overcome. But we're going to be asked for the next years to accept, to stretch ourselves culturally, to learn different cultures, to be curious, to say, hey, we live this way, but how do you live? I might not want to choose everything you do, but I want to be curious and I want to be open to it, and I want you to feel like you're part of our family, and come on in and we want to help you. If we don't do that, these kids are going to really struggle, and we ultimately are going to pay the price.
And it's a really fine line that you describe, and a very difficult one with the war that we fight today. The war that we fight today is much different. And I'd like to bring John back in here, than World War II. The World War II, you knew who your enemy was. They were there in front of you. They were wearing different colors, and it was very easy to distinguish who you were fighting. Nowadays, it's very, very tough to distinguish the bad guys, if you will, because we go into these countries and we're trying to separate people on the street who are terrorists and extremists from those just trying to lead a peaceful life. And I'm sure that also translates to immigrants coming into this country. John, my question for you is, have you, and you, as you mentioned, came in the late 40s into this country, have you realized the difference that I'm describing with immigrants today? And if so, how do you see, how do you see the change for our future, and what does your article represent?
Yes, I have seen that. And as a matter of fact, in students in my class in the high school that I taught in, how I see it for the future is, I think that, like Susan says, we need to get it right. I think there's a couple of things that would really help is if we could encourage parents to talk with their kids in the home environment to build that understanding of their own self-esteem and accepting other people no matter what they look like or what their culture is, and then out in the school environment to give them opportunities to dialogue with each other throughout the day and spread the word. I think that's going to make a big difference.
Boy, wise words from a very wise gentleman. Guys, you're watching Up for Discussion live here on the Mothership, ParaRockTV.com, and as well on LATV in the Leominster area. We're going to step out. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, more with Susan Jamieson and John Jeffery. Stick around.
Up for Discussion with Jeff and Shannon Sylvia. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Up for Discussion live with Jeff and Shannon is brought to you in part by Bailey's Bar and Grill. Sasquatch Coffee, and Village Pizza.
It's okay to cheat on your same old network with us. We won't tell.
And now back to Up for Discussion right here on Para-Rock TV.
Welcome back to Up for Discussion Live, and thank you for joining us from around the world on your handheld mobile devices, your iPhones, your tablets, and your smartphones, as well as on the mothership, LATV, in the Leominster area on your televisions. Thank you all for joining us. And tonight we're talking about a very, very tough and important subject to do with bullying and the future of our youth and how the country is going and to be affected in the generations to come. Now, just before we went off the air, I did want to bring to your attention that our guests are from Canada, and there is some breaking news from Canada. I need to know how these guys feel about this because everybody in the world knows it. Everybody in the world knows the individual we're talking about. And we're talking about now former Mayor Rob Ford, who, of course, became famous around the world for his, let's call them, extracurricular activities. But now the era of Rob Ford is complete. And we have a new mayor elected in the city of Toronto. John Tory is now the mayor. I'll start with you, Susan. What does this mean to the city of Toronto as far as changing mayors? Because as you and I were just talking off the air, it wasn't always easy to be Rob Ford, the mayor, after the shenanigans came out in public.
Yeah, he is someone that was bullied. So he brought his own unique style to the city of Toronto. And he had a huge following. A lot of people really loved him. And he, you had to admire him. He put all his emotions on the table. You didn't have to second guess it. So there's part of me that admires him 100%. And there's part of me that thinks, no, he didn't set the best example he could have as mayor of Toronto. But you know what? Who's perfect?
Wow.
And I think he gave a breath of fresh air to everybody that, you know what? I don't have to be perfect. I can have mistakes too. So I learned from him. I appreciated what he taught us all. And right now, he really does need to focus on getting himself well.
Boy, that is an interesting perspective from a resident of the area. And I will tell you that public opinion around the world is similar but different at the same time. You can't argue that he is a likable individual, and that, you know, he connects well with people and shows a deep caring for his community. Now, did a lot of bad choices and extracurricular activities get in the way of his public career? Of course it did. But boy, you know, you said it best. You can admire him and yet be disappointed at the same time for you know, what he took to the office and what he brought to the position. I'd like to bring John in real quick. John, I believe, is also from the area.
Yes, I am, just east of Toronto.
Okay, then what does the newest election mean to you in the changing of the guard, if you will? You know, Ray Ford, he was publicized as pretty much a sideshow. I mean, you know, you talk about bullied. The media actually, you know, ate him alive and swallowed him whole. You know, they crucified him in the media and made him look horrendous. How did you view the story in light of you know, what's seen around the world and also what Susan has just said?
Well, I think that his antics as a bully got in the way of his goodness as an effective politician. And I think the things that he did, the antics, were a product of the pain that he suffered being bullied in an earlier life. That's my guess.
Okay.
But yeah, he was effective in a number of ways. He said he, you know, trimmed the fat. He did some good things, but unfortunately, his bullying ways got in the way of things, and he didn't listen to some of the people that he should have. And, you know.
Yeah, and you're right, though. It certainly has to do with a lot of people that surround you in that situation. You're really, at that point, only as good as the people that are giving you good, solid advice, especially in a public office and in a position like that. Now, the subject at hand is bullying.
Oh, yeah. It's really easy to sit in the cheap seats and say, you should do this and you should do that.
Yeah.
Put yourself in his position, and, you know, you have to admire that he did keep to himself. He's gone the course. Who would have survived that kind of media attention?
That's a great point, because most folks, when they get dragged through the media like that, you know, they're done and you never hear from them again. But
his wife loves him, his kids love him, and like I said, I really wish him the best, and he really does need to get well again. I really hope he does beat his disease.
Well, those are gracious parting words, and certainly a humble heart from those up there who supported and voted for Mayor Ford, and hopefully he does get the help he needs. And the reports to follow will be him living a clean and healthy lifestyle.
Well, you do know that he's battling cancer.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very sad. We do want to stay on the topic of bullying, which is the main topic tonight, and a lot of what's going on here today surrounds bullying in our schools, in our youth, and it affects people at all ages. It affects families, parents, mothers, fathers, teachers, and just recently, I want to bring to everybody's attention another breaking story out of Washington State, and you're looking at Washington State school shooter Jalen Freiberg at a very young age. Here's the scary thing here, guys. Captain of his football team, most popular kid in school, very, very quiet, likable kid, got along with everybody, got along with his teachers, got good grades, walks into school one day, sits down at the cafeteria, and opens fire. And boy, we are missing something. And that is the point that is to be made tonight, is that if we have to open our eyes and pay attention to this stuff, because this is happening now. It's happening in our schools, and it's affecting everybody. It's affecting families. It's affecting teachers. I mean, when I went to school as a kid, you didn't worry about getting shot up. You didn't worry about dying, and your parents didn't worry about you coming home. So this is something that's very, very serious, and it affects, very deeply people at many, many levels. So Susan, I'd like to bring you back into this conversation. And you and I were talking a little bit earlier about how important it is to do this now. And boy, just looking at the stories of the week, you couldn't be more correct in that.
Well, the Greenzone, we're not a political organization. We have no desire to be. We're just citizens of the world, if you want. But if you look at the cover, it is dealing with some really tough issues. It's dealing with war in the middle, in countries that now are beyond countries we don't always understand. Do I know what it's like to be Muslim? I don't. I do see people that are very respectful, and you're drawn to them because of their gracious manners. But I also hear tons of reports of terrorism. And so when I see people that are garbed a little differently, I don't know what to do. And so I'm an adult, and now you got kids in school that are fighting all this. So you've got that on one hand, and it is affecting us globally, because how could 9/11 happen? How could some of, the terrorist act that are going on here, how could Ottawa happen last week? So it makes you hesitant to greet people. But at the same time, if we don't force ourselves to understand each other, where are we going? Are we going towards a nuclear holocaust? Are we going to get rid of ours? Like, what is the solution here? And at some point, we have to stop. Those like John, who are adults, have to step up and say, I want to help. I want to stop the mess. And it's not going to be through grand gestures, or it's going to be through quiet programs that reach out to quiet kids, because they're the ones to watch. The ones that are out front, they're probably the ones that are okay, because they're telling you when they're not happy. It's the quiet ones that are sitting there, and they are struggling, and we're not reaching them. So are we able to reach them through their talent, through writing talent, through arts, are they able to put their thoughts down in writing and write in and be part of contests like that? And really, in some degree, that's what American Idol is. It's going out to the country and saying, we want to give a shot to all kids that have talent. Come on in and introduce yourself to us. We're going to make it really easy. And that's why I went after Marvel, because, a comic contest by ourselves, nobody cares. A comic contest with Marvel Entertainment saying, we're going to draw your story. Now everybody's paying attention, and
Sure.
kids and kids know that we're serious. Our help is real. We want to be there. We've got we've got someone on board that cares too, like Marvel Entertainment.
Now, I want to go back to John for just a second. And John, we're now looking at the comic itself and the drawing. Can you take us through the process of putting this together, and the pieces and the components involved in it?
Well, I started out with a rough sketch of kind of what I wanted to say from when I was a little kid to now, and I had to really sit down and think about what I'd been through, the pain I went through, what did I learn, how did I get better, and what could I take forward. And then I sat down. I had a couple of people. My wife looked at it. Dr. Sohail kind of edited some of it for me and gave me some advice. And then the contest came up, and I kind of hesitated at first, but then the people said, well, no, you should put in the book. And I actually put it in the last day. And I ended up winning the contest, so who knew?
Wow. Now, there's actually many dimensions of this as we're looking at the book itself, the book cover itself. It looks like it depicts World War II. It looks like it depicts, something from the Afghan wars and the wars that we're fighting now. There's tanks, there's horses. Take us through the timeline, if you will, and building, the individual parts of this whole drawing.
Well, from 42 to 45, when I was just young, that's when Germany was attacking England with bombs and rockets and so on. And I lived near an Air Force base, so like almost every day I was looking at dogfights in the sky. And it got so bad that the British government took us away to the West End of England so we would survive. Wow. Which we did. There was a recovery period from 45 to 49, but it was still so bad that, my dad said, we got to get out of here. It's not any better. And his sister sent a letter, and we traveled by boat to Canada. And from 1950 to about 1956, 57, I was in public school, and that's when the worst was bullying. For me, as a new immigrant to Canada, that was like hell for me. And the fact that I couldn't get any support or any help anywhere just made it absolute hell for me. And it finally stopped in grade 10 one day when I punched the kid. And, you know, that wasn't a good thing to do, but I was so frustrated. And ironically, years later in the business world, I was in the business for 29 years before a teacher. One of the people I dealt with was one of the people who bullied me. So go figure.
Wow. And, you know, it's funny. You just brought back a story that my father used to tell me. He went in for an interview, and the guy that interviewed him was horrendous to him. He pretty much chewed him up one side, down the other, and dismissed him. And he never got a shot at the job. It was nothing that was fair. And he went away very discouraged. Well, years later, my dad is a CEO of a company. And who walks in to the interview but the same gentleman that had interviewed years ago with my father. So it was kind of funny how the tides turned, and the guy walked in and actually recognized my father's face and knew how badly he treated him, and as a result turned without saying a word and exited the interview before an interview could even happen. But you know, it's certainly lends to credibility when all things come full circle. And you know, we were talking about it earlier. A lot of folks in the chat room were talking about it as well. Where does it end? You know, and John brings up a good point. He met bullying with resistance, and resistance coming from anger, and stood up to a bully and you know, pounded him physically. And is that the way to do it? Maybe not in all cases, you know, but there has to be some sort of strength there. But the strength, I think, has to come one child at a time, and it has to come in a loving way. And I think this whole contest and the cover itself really depicts that. And John, we're glad to have you back with us. You know, you see the characters in the back and the dimension of this with scenes from World War II, with the dogfights, but then on the front. Then as your eyes move down and toward the front, you see the gentleman walking and explaining almost, you know, in a caring way to a child walking with him. And tell us about that part of it and what that actually means.
That's me as a teacher, literally at the end of my working career, having gained the understanding that I could reach out to somebody and that I could help people with bullying. And that's me at the stage where I'm writing the book and trying to reach out and help others.
Wow, that's awesome. It really is. And once again, if you're just joining us, we're talking with comic book contest winner John Jeffery from Canada, and we're also joined by Greenzone Movement Managing Director Susan Jamieson. And Susan, I want to bring you back in here. This whole contest, and you had mentioned before the importance of partnering up with Marvel and the global dimension that would give it, and the power and the horsepower behind it. That wasn't the easiest thing to accomplish out of the gate, and there was a process that happened. Can you tell a little bit about that process and how you overcame and was able to get the project to where it is today?
Well, actually, they always tell you dream big, and, you know, the slogans say you can do whatever you want to do. And I would say I pretty well have lived my life that way. I have thought of things, and then I've thought, I need to talk to this person, or I need to talk to that person. I'm one of those people that did write to Warren Buffett, and I was lucky enough to get a response. I've written to Jeffrey Immelt, and he's written me back. Just things I wanted to do in my career. So when I knew that I wanted to put together a comic contest, I knew I wanted to meet Marvel. I'd never met them before. I'm not a big comic fan, but I knew Marvel was the one to go for. So I went to New York, and basically with hat in hand and a lot of enthusiasm, I knocked on their door and asked them if they'd partner with us. Wow.
And the original response that you got, was it a positive response, or did you have to go through a few layers to get to where you wanted to go? What was your initial contact?
I was fortunate enough to meet the best guy I could have from the beginning, and he was intrigued. And of course, you never get something immediately. Everything takes hard work. People want success. It would be really nice if success just landed in your lap. It's never going to happen that way.
That's very true.
So I think your determination is what is going to drive this. So through the discussions back and forth, I overcame the objections, and I convinced them that this was a good thing to support. And that's how we got started.
Wow.
Eventually, I got the yes I really wanted.
And now this has grown into a global effort. It's something that is reaching out to children everywhere, from all walks of life. And we can't say enough about how important this is, and how important it is to make it happen now. There's so much going on, as you and I have talked about, so much crap going on around the world today. That where does it end? Where does the course change? It's going to be one child at a time. It has to be our future. And we had talked a little bit before about how difficult it was to determine who our enemy is. And I want to pose this question to you, Susan, because it's a very delicate and fine line. There are folks that are coming into this country, and most recently, hits home for me, the Boston bombing marathon. Now, here are children, young adults that are just out of high school and college, and they just prosecuted another one this week that was involved. They came here and mingled with our society and became part of America for the sole purpose of bringing destruction to innocent people and destroying lives. How do you walk down the street and determine who's who, and how does that affect your judgment in trying to reach out to kids and make a difference one kid at a time?
I know, it's hard. I mean, it's like I have traveled to the Middle East, and when I was there, I was warmly greeted, and because I was immersed in their culture, it was it helped my learning curve a little bit. I looked at women that were covered, and they were brilliant. I had some of the most brilliant conversations ever with these women, and I thought, okay, I am led to believe that they're not educated. Well, that's wrong, because I have enjoyed 6 weeks of conversations with women that were nothing brilliant. So that's wrong. And I guess us to keep our minds open, to be kind, and to not second guess or to work through our prejudice. And we all have prejudice. So if anyone tells me they have no prejudice, I don't believe them. We all have them on some level. Are we going to fix them?
Sure.
And there was a really neat study in Japan. A doctor took water, and when you spoke to it harshly, it changed. It became, the dynamic of the water changed, it became ugly. Mm-hmm. When you spoke to it complete, it had beautiful patterns in it. You'd have to see his display. But what happens if it is as simple as being kind in what we say, in checking our mouth? So before we let out a snide remark or a prejudicial comment, we stop ourselves. And really, if we don't have anything nice to say, we just don't say anything until we're ready to be nice. Mm-hmm. What happens if it was that simple, that we made that small change, and all of a sudden, if it affects water that way, it's got to affect all of us around. So what happens if we just make a to ourselves that if we have nothing nice to say, we'll keep our mouth shut until we can find something nice to say? And that sparks a whole new movement of people being kind to each other, and then the rest starts to fit into place. Boy, the rest starts to come, and maybe, like I said, it is that simple.
And boy, a lot of support from the chat room. It does happen one kid at a time. And, there's a lot of hope in the world, and I think that's the key word to use here. In the midst of the suicides, in the midst of the school shootings, in the midst of the bullying, and these kids that are just, completely disrespecting not only each other, but their regard for human life in general, there is some hope. There are people like Susan and people at Greenzone movement and people like John Jeffery who care, that want to reach out, that want to help make a difference tomorrow, immediately, and make tomorrow a better day for everybody. And it goes worldwide. It really does. So, Susan, I did want to bring you back in, Susan. You know, we do have a few more minutes here and a lot to cover. I know that you have a message for the folks, and tell us, you know, what this whole experience has brought you to want to tell the rest of the world.
You don't have to be fake to make a difference. You can be nobody and be happy in your nobus. But if you're at your desk and you want to help, I know it sounds fake and stupid, but you can help. And if you approach people the right way, if you have enthusiasm and passion, if you're kind, you can get that hearing ear. You can make change happen. And basically, we're going to need a whole bunch of people that want to engage with their simple idea. They don't have to be cutting edge or, you know, crack business people. They can lead with their heart and make things happen.
I want to thank you both for joining us. Susan Jamieson, who is the managing director at Greenzone Movement, and also John Jeffery, who is the Greenzone Comic Contest winner. I want to thank you both for joining us tonight and sharing your powerful stories, not only about your lives, but how you feel about the future and the children and the countries and the world, for that matter. Thank you both for joining us.
Okay.
And guys, I do want to wrap up with a couple of thoughts. We've got some great thoughts in the chat room here. And, you know, the hope does continue, even if you can't find the words meaningfully in the beginning. Everything is contagious. And Morgan brings up a great point in our chat room. Everything is contagious. Try a little bit every day. Try doing something a little bit kinder than you did yesterday. Maybe go out of your way a little bit more to help somebody arbitrarily than you did yesterday. You'll be surprised after a short period of time how that catches on, how that behavior catches on. It's like a diet. You know, I'm a former heart patient, and I was on a really strict diet for a long time. I was forced to eat bean sprouts and crap that I'd never wish on anybody. But I will tell you that habit grew, and 6 or 8, 9 months down the road, when I was handed my first French fry, ooh, I'll tell you, it tasted awful. And I think that same analogy can be used for what we've been talking about tonight. I think we can change children one at a time. We can bring them back to having hope about the world and not being so angry to a point where they're going to walk in and shoot up a school or take their own life or bully people around them. You know, because these kids grow into adults, and the apples never fall too far from the trees when it comes to parenting and what kind of example our parents set for kids. And maybe there aren't good parents out there, but there certainly are good groups that kids can get involved in. Not only groups that we've been talking about tonight, but sports. You know, we had a guest on the other day that was talking about a basketball league that he started for inner city kids, just to get them off the streets and get them doing something positive. And you'd be surprised how just a little effort can go a long way when it comes to bringing kids together and giving them hope, because that's what we're talking about here. I think the kids that are angry, the kids that are walking into these schools with weapons and wanting to bring harm, they're angry. And for good reason. There's a very tough state of affairs in the world today, and there's lots more to deal with, I think, than when I was a kid. And it used to be the other way around. You know, you listen to your parents say, I used to walk up the hill both ways in a snowstorm and carry my brother, and things were hard for us, and you got it easy. Well, I think kids today have it harder than we did as kids. We didn't have to worry about going to school and getting shot up, and we certainly didn't have to worry about coming home to our loving families. So with that said, we'd like to invite all of you to try to go out and be a little bit kinder to your neighbor tomorrow and maybe make an effort. And with that said, we'll see you all next week. Same time, same station. Good night, everybody.
admit you got your claws in me.